Before her near-death experience, Sarah Williams led a typical life, busy, routine-driven, and skeptical of anything spiritual. Living in a quiet suburban town with her husband, Greg, and their two children, Emily and Noah, she didn't think much about angels or divine intervention. Sarah saw life as something to be navigated through hard work, family obligations, and a bit of tradition, like attending church on Sundays, though it was more habit than belief. Spirituality wasn't something she spent time exploring, but everything changed in an instant. One day, Sarah was in a car accident so severe that it nearly claimed her life. In those final moments, she had an experience that would alter her perspective forever. She saw something she never thought possible: guardian angels. These angels were not just myths. They were real, watching over her and protecting her in ways she couldn't have imagined. This near-death experience shattered everything Sarah had once believed. It opened her eyes to a reality beyond the physical world and filled her with a deep sense of peace and understanding. She no longer questioned the presence of divine protection in her life. Before diving deeper into Sarah's extraordinary experience, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and comment below. Where are you watching from? My name is Sarah Williams, and I never thought this would be my story. I never thought I'd be the one talking about angels, guardian spirits, or divine protection. That's the kind of stuff I used to dismiss as fantasy, stories people told to make themselves feel better when life didn't make sense. But now, after everything I've been through, I know the truth. I know that something beyond our understanding is out there, watching over us every single day. It all started one afternoon. I was driving home from the grocery store, just like I'd done 100 times before. The road was familiar, and the world around me seemed calm, almost mundane. My kids, Emily and Noah, were at home, Greg was at work, and life was exactly as it should be, or so I thought. But that day, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. The crash happened so fast, I barely had time to react. One moment, I was driving down the road, and the next, I was spinning, crashing into something, everything blurred, the sound of metal crunching, the airbag exploding in front of me, and then nothing. I felt an odd, heavy stillness settle in. For a moment, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anything at all. And then I realized I was dead. I can't explain how I knew, but I just knew. I wasn't in the car anymore. The world I had known had faded away, and I was somewhere else. I was surrounded by an overwhelming sense of peace, of light. But it wasn't just light. It was warm. It felt like I was being embraced by something beyond this world, something that was pure and loving. The sense of safety and love was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But then, confusion struck. I wasn't ready for this. I had so many questions. Was this what death was like? Was this the end? I'd never thought about it much before. Who has time to think about something like that? But now, in this strange new reality, all I could do was ask myself, what happens next? I tried to speak, but no words came out. It was as if I didn't need to speak. And then that's when I saw them, the angels. At first I thought I was imagining things. I didn't believe in angels. They were something out of fairy tales, right? But there they were, standing around me, glowing with a light that seemed to come from within them. They weren't the winged, ethereal creatures I had once imagined. They weren't distant or lofty. They were real, they were present, and they were full of love. I felt a strange calmness settle over me, but at the same time I was terrified. Was I supposed to follow them? Was I supposed to go somewhere with them? I didn't know. I wanted to stay, but I didn't understand why they were here or what was happening. Then one of the angels spoke. But it wasn't in words, it was a feeling. A message I understood in the deepest part of my soul. You are not done yet. You have more to do. You are protected always. It was like a wave of reassurance washing over me. Suddenly all my fears melted away. I didn't know how or why, but I knew that I wasn't alone. There was something bigger than me at work, something divine. The angels were here, not just to guide me, but to remind me that I wasn't supposed to go yet. They had been with me all along, guarding me in ways I'd never noticed. It was as if I had been walking through life blind to their presence, unaware of how much they had been protecting me from. The overwhelming feeling of love and peace began to fill every inch of my being. I felt like I was being wrapped in the arms of something eternal. And at that moment, I understood angels weren't just fictional stories. They were real. They were part of a greater plan, part of something far beyond my understanding. But as much as I wanted to stay in that moment of peace, I knew I couldn't. I wasn't ready. I had my family, my children. I had more to give, more to experience. And somehow, I knew my time wasn't up. With one final glance at the angels, I felt myself pulled back. The sensation was jarring, like being tugged back into a place I didn't fully belong. But I wasn't scared anymore. I had seen something incredible, something that would stay with me forever. I had seen how deeply we are protected, how every step we take is watched over by forces we can't fully comprehend. That day, I returned to life, physically at least. But in my heart, I knew I had been touched by something greater. And the journey I had started on that day would change everything. When I woke up in the hospital, everything felt surreal. The cold, sterile smell of the room, the soft beeping of machines, and the distant murmur of voices outside felt like a different world compared to the warm, peaceful place I had just left. My body hurt, aching in ways I hadn't known was possible, but it was nothing compared to the emotional whirlwind I was trying to make sense of. I had no idea how long I had been unconscious, but I knew that something had changed within me. I had seen angels, real, divine beings, and they had shown me how much we are loved, how much we are protected. That thought kept echoing in my mind as I lay there, trying to find a way to piece together the events that had just unfolded. It felt like I had been given a glimpse into something so profound, but now I had to figure out what to do with it. The doctors were telling me that I was lucky to be alive. Greg was sitting beside me, holding my hand, his eyes full of concern, but I could see the skepticism in his expression too. He didn't believe in angels. He didn't believe in any of the things I had just experienced. To him, it had to be a dream, a hallucination brought on by the trauma of the crash. He was trying to comfort me, but I could see it in his face. He didn't know how to make sense of this, and I didn't know how to explain it to him either. "Sarah, you've been through a lot. Just rest," he said gently, squeezing my hand. His voice sounded tired, like he hadn't slept in days. I wanted to reassure him that I was okay, but in truth, I wasn't. I wasn't okay with what I had experienced, because I didn't know how to explain it to him, or anyone else for that matter. I felt like I was carrying this huge secret, and the weight of it was overwhelming. I wanted to share what I had seen, what I had felt, but I didn't know where to start, and worse, I didn't know if anyone would believe me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. I kept seeing their faces, the angels. I remembered the warmth, the sense of peace that came with them, and the overwhelming knowledge that I was protected. It was hard to describe it all, but I knew it wasn't something I could just dismiss. It was real. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. If the angels were real, then so was the message they had given me. I wasn't done yet. There was still something for me to do. But what? I tried to tell Jessica about it the next day. Jessica had been my best friend for years, and we always shared everything, our fears, our dreams, our disappointments. But when I told her what had happened, her response was not what I had hoped for. She listened, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. "Sarah, I think you're just going through some post-traumatic stress," she said, her voice soft but filled with concern. "You've been through a lot. Maybe your mind is just playing tricks on you." Her words stung. I didn't want to believe that what I had experienced was just some byproduct of trauma. I wanted to believe that what I saw, what I felt, was real. But hearing her say that, hearing the doubt in her voice, made me question myself. Was I losing my mind? It didn't help that Greg was still avoiding the conversation. He would listen, but I could tell he didn't believe me. And in many ways, I understood why. It's hard to accept something so unbelievable, especially when you've never seen anything like it yourself. But that left me feeling isolated. I felt like I was carrying this weight of knowledge, this truth, but I had no one to share it with. There was one person who might understand, though, my mom. She had always been the spiritual one in the family, the one who believed in angels, in divine protection. When I finally told her, I saw her eyes light up with understanding. "Sarah," she said gently, "I've always known your angels were with you. I've prayed for you every day. They've been guiding you, protecting you, just as they always have." Her words were like balm to my soul. For the first time since I woke up, I felt understood. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. My experience was real, and that realization gave me some peace. But I still had so many questions, so much uncertainty. What was I supposed to do now? Was there more for me to learn? I knew one thing for sure. My life had changed forever. I wasn't the same person I had been before the accident. I had seen angels. I had been shown a truth I couldn't deny. But the real challenge was figuring out how to live with that knowledge and what it meant for the life I still had to live. The weeks after the accident were filled with uncertainty. I was physically recovering, but emotionally, I was in turmoil. I kept going through the motions, getting the kids ready for school, making meals, attending doctor's appointments, but my mind was never fully present. I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play in my life now, something I had to understand. One night as I lay in bed, my thoughts swirling in circles, I decided to pray. It wasn't something I'd done much before. Sure, I said a quick prayer here and there, but nothing like this. I was desperate for answers, desperate to understand the truth of what had happened to me. And so I prayed, not just out of habit, but out of a deep, heartfelt desire to know, what am I supposed to do with this knowledge? I didn't expect anything in return, but as I closed my eyes, I felt something shift. The room became warmer, the air more still, and I felt that same peaceful presence, the one that had surrounded me after the crash. It was as if I wasn't alone anymore. I felt a sensation of being watched over, of being loved. But this time, something was different. I wasn't just aware of the angels around me. I was aware of something else, a voice, gentle but clear, speaking directly to my soul. You are not finished yet. There is more for you to do. You are being called. It was as though the words had been etched into the very core of my being. They were not audible, but deeply resonated in my heart. I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the moment I was being called to something greater. The weight of it was immense. I wasn't just a mother, a wife, or a woman who had survived an accident. I was being given a purpose. The angels had protected me for a reason. And now, it was time for me to act. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't move. My mind was racing with questions. What does this mean? What am I supposed to do with this message? Why me? And then the vision came. It wasn't like the angels from before, but it was equally profound. In front of me, a series of images flashed by, images of people who were suffering, who were lost, who were desperate. Some were friends, others strangers, but all were facing battles of their own. The message was clear. Help them, guide them, share what you've learned. I saw myself in a new light, not as someone merely recovering from an accident, but as someone who was meant to be a source of comfort and hope for others. I had been given a second chance at life, not just to live for myself, but to be a beacon for others. This wasn't a gift just for me. It was a gift that was meant to be shared. As the vision faded and the warmth of peace returned, I understood. This was my calling. I was being asked to help others, to share my experience, to guide them toward understanding that we are never truly alone. The angels had shown me how they protect us every single day, even when we don't see it. And now it was my turn to help others understand that. The weight of this new revelation was overwhelming. I wasn't just a passive observer in this life. I was a participant in something much bigger. But with that weight came a responsibility I wasn't sure I was ready for. How was I supposed to help others when I was still trying to figure out my own place in this new reality? But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't ignore this calling. I had been given a glimpse into a higher truth, and I couldn't turn my back on it. The angels were real. Divine protection was real. And now I was being asked to help others see that too. As the days turned into weeks, I struggled to keep my newfound understanding to myself. Every time I looked at Greg or talked to my friends, I felt like there was something essential missing from our conversations. A deep truth I couldn't share with them without feeling judged or misunderstood. Everyone around me seemed to be focused on the normal routines of life, work, school, dinner plans, but my mind was constantly racing, trying to process everything I had seen and felt. Greg, as much as he loved me, didn't understand. He tried to comfort me, but his words didn't reach me the way they used to. He'd say things like, "I'm just glad you're okay," or "We can get through this together." but they felt hollow to me now. I wasn't just glad to be alive anymore. I was grappling with something much bigger, something he couldn't see. One night, as we sat in the living room, I attempted to explain it to him again. The vision, the angels, the message I'd received. I could see the skepticism in his eyes. His brow furrowed, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Sarah, I don't know what you're going through right now," he said, his voice strained. "But you need to focus on getting better. The kids need you. We need you. You can't let this, whatever this is, take over everything." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Greg was worried, of course he was, but his words stung because they weren't just a plea for me to focus on recovery. They were a subtle rejection of the truth I had discovered. He didn't want me to change. He didn't want me to believe that angels had protected me or that I had been called to something greater. He just wanted things to go back to normal. "I am getting better," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "But it's not just about physical healing, Greg. It's about understanding why I'm still here, why I was given this second chance. The angels showed me something that changes everything." Greg sighed and ran a hand through his hair, looking away. "I just can't follow you down that path, Sarah. I don't believe in that stuff, and I don't want to see you getting lost in it." His words stung more than I expected. I had hoped he would see the truth with me, that we could share this spiritual awakening together. But it was clear that we were on two different paths. His disbelief created a wall between us, and for the first time, I wondered if our differences were too wide to bridge. I had hoped my mom would be a little more understanding, but even she struggled to grasp the depth of what I was experiencing. When I told her about my conversation with Greg, she frowned, her face filled with concern. "Sweetheart, I know this is hard for you," she said softly, "but Greg is just scared. He doesn't understand what you've been through, and he might never be able to. Don't let it tear you apart." "But I feel like I have to do something with this," I protested, my voice breaking. "I've been given a message. I have to share it." Mom placed a hand on my shoulder. "I believe you, honey, but you can't force this on Greg. You have to let him come to his own conclusions, even if that means you have to walk this journey alone for a while." Her words were both comforting and heartbreaking. I didn't want to walk this path alone, but I felt the weight of my calling so deeply that I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant distancing myself from the people I loved. As I reflected on everything, I started to realize that this journey wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about learning the truth of the angels and divine protection. It was about the impact it would have on everyone around me. The changes I was experiencing weren't just internal. They were going to challenge the people I loved and force them to confront their own beliefs and fears. The angels had shown me that we are all connected, that we are all protected, but that didn't mean everyone would accept it. Some would resist, some would question, and some would reject it altogether. I had to learn to accept that. This wasn't going to be an easy journey, but it was mine. And as much as I wanted to change things for Greg, for my friends, and for my family, I had to accept that they would have to find their own path. As the weeks passed, I found myself becoming more isolated. The more I tried to share my experience, the more I seemed to alienate the people closest to me. Greg's skepticism weighed heavily on me, and despite my mom's support, I felt like I was slowly drifting away from everyone. But even in the quiet, I could feel the presence of something greater, calling me to continue. I had seen angels, I had been shown a deeper truth, and now it was time to act on it. I began volunteering at a local shelter, something I had never considered before. The work was hard, the hours long, and the people I met were broken, struggling to find their way. At first, I wasn't sure what I was doing there. I wasn't a counselor, I wasn't a preacher. What could I possibly offer to these people who were so far from my experience? But as I spent more time there, helping where I could, I realized that it wasn't just the work that mattered. It was the connection. I had been given a new understanding of life, of the way we are all interconnected, and it was here with these people that I could begin to live out that calling. I met a woman named Maria who had recently lost her daughter to a tragic accident. She was angry, lost in her grief, unable to understand why her life had taken such a devastating turn. Her pain was raw, and I could feel it like a weight in my chest. At first, I didn't know what to say to her. How could I, a woman who had barely recovered from my own trauma, offer comfort to someone who had suffered such a loss? But one night, as I was sitting beside her, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I don't know why I'm even here," she said softly. "I don't know how to keep going. I feel like my whole world has ended. My faith in God is gone." Something inside me shifted in that moment. I had been where she was, lost, questioning everything, feeling like I couldn't go on. I had felt abandoned by God, confused by the pain I had endured. But now I understood something different. I understood that even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of hope. The angels had shown me that we are never truly alone, no matter how much we might feel like it. And now, it was time to share that truth with Maria. I gently placed a hand on hers. "I know it's hard," I said quietly. "I know it feels like everything is falling apart, but I've seen something that changed everything for me. I've seen how we're always protected, always loved, even when we can't feel it. And I believe that God has a plan for you. He's not done with you yet. Your story isn't over." Maria looked at me, her expression one of disbelief, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Hope, a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know for sure, but I could see that I had planted a seed. She didn't need to believe everything I said right then, but I hoped that maybe, just maybe, my words would stay with her long enough to make a difference. It wasn't just Maria. As I continued to volunteer, I encountered more people who were struggling with their own battles, people who had lost faith, people who had experienced unimaginable pain. Each one had a unique story, but they all shared the same thing. They were looking for something, anything, to help them heal. In each of these encounters, I found myself growing stronger in my own faith. The more I reached out, the more I shared what I had learned, the more I felt the angels' presence with me. It was as though they were guiding me in these moments, showing me how to speak the words that would touch someone's heart, how to offer comfort when there were no easy answers. But there were challenges too. As I began to talk more openly about my experience, I started to encounter more resistance. Friends who once supported me began to pull away, questioning my beliefs and my mental stability. They thought I was losing touch with reality, that I was grasping at straws to make sense of what had happened to me. The more I shared, the more isolated I became. Greg became distant too. He didn't say it outright, but I could feel the tension whenever we were together. His skepticism was like a wall I couldn't break through. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep going like this, trying to hold on to a truth that no one else seemed to understand. The loneliness was overwhelming at times, and the fear that I was losing everything I had worked for began to creep in. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stop now. I had been given a glimpse of something greater than myself, something beyond my understanding. And no matter how much resistance I faced, I couldn't ignore the truth that had been revealed to me. As the weeks wore on, the tension between Greg and me continued to grow. It wasn't just his disbelief that was hurting me, it was the silence that followed. When he looked at me, I could feel his confusion, his fear that I was no longer the woman he married. It wasn't that he didn't love me, he did, but he didn't know how to love this new version of me, the one who had been touched by something beyond our world. It wasn't just him. My friends, who had always been a strong support system, started to avoid me. I could feel their unease when I spoke about the angels or the message I had received. One afternoon, I met up with a close friend, Emily, for coffee. She was the one person who had always been there for me, who understood me in a way no one else did. But today, something was different. "I've been thinking about what you've been saying," Emily said carefully, her eyes darting around as if searching for the right words. "And I don't know, Sarah. I just don't get it. Angels? Messages from God? It feels like you've changed so much in such a short time. I'm worried about you." I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me, and the truth in her concern was hard to deny. I knew I had changed, but the question that haunted me was this a change for the better? I had found something that felt real, something that gave me hope in a way I had never experienced before. But was it too much? Had I crossed a line, embraced something that had become a burden to those around me? I know it sounds crazy, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but this is real. I've seen things, felt things. I can't just ignore it. She didn't respond immediately, but her expression was enough. She didn't believe me. She wanted to, but she couldn't. Her eyes were filled with sadness, and I could tell she was torn between wanting to be supportive and fearing that I was slipping away from the person I used to be. I just want you to be okay, Sarah, Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. I want you to come back to us. I felt a pang in my chest. I wanted to come back to the person I was before, too. I missed the woman who lived in the comfort of certainty, who followed the familiar paths laid out for her by society. But I couldn't ignore what I had learned. I couldn't undo the revelations I had received. Later that evening, after I had tucked the kids into bed, I sat down with Greg again. His face was etched with worry, and I could see that the tension was wearing him thin. "Sarah, I need to know, what is happening to you?" he asked, his voice trembling with fear. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I wanted so badly for him to understand, to see the angels the way I had, to believe in the same truth I now held. But I also knew that wasn't something I could force on him. "I'm still me, Greg," I said softly, my voice steadying. "I'm just different. I can't explain it fully, but I've been shown something. Something real. I can't go back to what I was before." Greg's face hardened, his jaw tightening. "But I don't know how to follow you down this path. You're talking about things that don't make sense, that feel dangerous. I don't want to lose you, but I'm scared, Sarah. I'm scared of what you're becoming." His words hit me like a slap to the face. He was afraid of losing me, afraid of the unknown. But more than that, he was afraid of how much I had changed. His fear was palpable, and it threatened to swallow us both. "I'm not asking you to follow me," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm just asking you to trust me. I need you to believe that this is real, that I've been called to something greater, and I need you to be with me, even if you don't understand." Greg didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I don't know, Sarah. I just don't know." As he turned away, I felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. The people I loved, the ones who had always been by my side, were slipping further away. I was alone in this new truth, alone in my calling. But in that loneliness, I also felt a strange sense of peace. I had been shown something beyond this world, something so deep that I couldn't ignore it, no matter how hard I tried. And even if I had to walk this path alone, I knew I wasn't truly alone. The angels were with me. God was with me. The longer I walked this unfamiliar path, the more I realized just how much I had underestimated the spiritual battle I was in. What had begun as a transformative experience filled with awe and wonder was slowly becoming a struggle, one that I didn't fully understand. I had seen angels, felt the touch of divine presence, and experienced glimpses of the eternal truths that lay beyond the veil of this world. But the more I shared these experiences, the more I encountered resistance, and not just from Greg or my friends. One evening, after another failed attempt to explain myself to Greg, I found myself in the quiet of my room, staring at the walls that had once felt like a sanctuary. Now, they felt confining, oppressive. It was as though everything around me was shifting, and I had no control over it. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door broke the silence. I hesitated before opening it, wondering who it could be at this late hour. When I swung it open, I was surprised to find a man standing there, someone I hadn't seen before. His appearance was striking, a tall man with deep, piercing eyes and an aura of quiet intensity. He was dressed simply, yet there was something about him that felt almost otherworldly. "Sarah," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "We need to talk." I stepped back, startled. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" "My name is Michael," he replied, his eyes not leaving mine. "I've been sent to help you understand what's happening to you." The air between us seemed to hum with an electric charge. My heart raced, and my mind spun in confusion. Could this be another angel? Or was this some sort of test, another challenge sent to derail me? I had no way of knowing, but deep within me, something told me I needed to listen. "Sent by whom?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my attempts to remain calm. "By the one who is always watching, guiding, protecting." You've been shown the truth, but there is much more to uncover. Your journey has only just begun, Sarah, Michael replied, stepping forward. And the path ahead will not be easy. I swallowed hard, trying to process his words. A deep unease washed over me, and a chill ran down my spine. I had already felt the weight of the struggle between my newfound faith and the world around me, but hearing this man's words made the situation feel far more urgent than I had realized. This wasn't just a journey of personal discovery anymore. It was a battle, a spiritual warfare that I hadn't been prepared for. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I've already been through so much. I don't know if I can handle any more." Michael looked at me with a mixture of understanding and compassion, but there was a firm resolve in his eyes. "You are stronger than you think, Sarah. The enemy works through fear, through doubt, but you have been chosen to witness the truth. You must stand firm, for there will be more opposition ahead. There are forces at work, forces that will try to lead you astray, to confuse you, to pull you away from your path, but you have the power to resist." His words stirred something deep inside me, an unfamiliar yet comforting power that I had only caught glimpses of. I had felt it before, a sense of something much larger than myself, a strength that came not from me but from God. But now it was clearer. I was part of something far greater than I had ever imagined. "How do I resist?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You resist by holding on to what you know to be true," Michael replied. "You resist by trusting the angels that surround you, the truth that has been revealed to you. But above all, you resist by standing firm in your faith. Trust that God is guiding you, even when it feels like the whole world is against you." Before I could respond, Michael turned to leave, his eyes locking with mine one last time. "The enemy will use those you love to try and shake your resolve. Be vigilant, Sarah. The time of your transformation is upon you." As the door closed behind him, I was left standing in stunned silence. The weight of his words settled heavily on my heart. The angels had shown me so much, but now I understood there was more at play than I had realized. It wasn't just about my own journey. It was about a cosmic battle between light and darkness, and I had a role to play. My first instinct was to turn to Greg to explain what had just happened, but I knew the look on his face. He wouldn't understand. He wasn't ready for this. No one was. And yet, deep down, I felt a stirring, a sense of urgency. I had been called for something greater, something beyond what I could see. The forces of darkness were real, and I had been placed at the center of this fight. But I wasn't alone. The angels were with me, and God had shown me the truth. I couldn't turn back now. The revelation I had received, the visit from Michael, left me shaken. But it also solidified something deep within me. This was bigger than me. My journey was not just a personal transformation. It was part of a greater spiritual narrative that was unfolding all around me. But the more I explored this truth, the more I felt myself alienating those I loved, those I had always leaned on for support. Greg, still reeling from the shifts in our relationship, grew distant. Our conversations, once easy and filled with affection, had become strained and awkward. There were days when he wouldn't even look me in the eye. His fear of the unknown, his fear of what I had become, was growing stronger. I could feel the growing gap between us, and no matter how hard I tried to reach out to him, it seemed as if he was slipping away, unable to understand the deep, unshakable peace I had found. One evening, as I sat alone, pondering everything that had happened, I received a text from my younger sister, Megan. It was simple, just a question. "How are you doing?" It caught me off guard. Megan had been one of the few people who hadn't judged me when I started talking about my experiences. But she had also distanced herself. She'd always been practical, grounded, the skeptic in the family. We had grown apart, and I wasn't sure if it was because of what I was going through, or if life had just pulled us in different directions. But now her message felt like a lifeline. I texted back, telling her about the latest encounter with Michael and how the battle I was facing felt much bigger than I had anticipated. To my surprise, she replied almost immediately, "Sarah, this sounds crazy, but I've been feeling strange too. I keep seeing things, hearing things. It's like something is calling me, but I don't know what it is. Maybe you can help me understand?" My heart skipped a beat. Megan? Skeptical, pragmatic Megan? She was experiencing something like what I had. I didn't know what to make of it, but one thing was clear. She needed me, and she was ready to explore this journey too. The following weekend, I invited her over to talk. As soon as she walked into the house, I could sense the change in her. There was a hesitance in her step, a wariness in her eyes, but there was also a curiosity, an openness that hadn't been there before. "I've been seeing things in the corner of my vision," she confessed, her voice low, like shadows or flashes of light. "It started a few weeks ago, and I've been hearing whispers, but I don't know if I'm just losing it." I nodded slowly, my heart racing. Megan had been feeling the pull, the same pull I had felt when I was first drawn into this new reality. It was as if the universe was opening up to her in the same way it had opened to me. "Megan, you're not losing it," I said softly. "This is real. There are forces at work that we can't fully comprehend, but they are here. The angels are here. I've seen them, I've felt them, and I know it sounds crazy, but I believe they're trying to show us something we need to see." She looked at me, her eyes filled with doubt, but also with a deep, unspoken understanding. "I don't know if I believe it," she said quietly, "but I feel it too. Something is happening and I don't know what to do with it." "I don't have all the answers, Megan," I said, my voice softening, "but I've learned to trust what I've been shown, and I think you need to trust it too. Whatever is happening, we're not alone. We're being guided." As we talked late into the night, I realized that Megan wasn't just seeking answers for herself. She was seeking a way to reconnect with the truth, to find the peace I had found. She was scared, yes, but she was also eager, open in a way that surprised me. She needed someone to show her that the path was real, that it wasn't just some fleeting illusion or figment of imagination. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of connection, a bond with her that had been missing for years. But as I helped her work through her own doubts and fears, I knew that this connection would be tested. Just like my relationship with Greg, my relationship with Megan would face challenges. She would have to decide if she was ready to embrace the unknown, to accept the truth that had been laid before her. And as much as I wanted to shield her from the difficulties ahead, I knew she had to make that decision for herself, just like I had. As I sat in the quiet of the night reflecting on our conversation, I felt a shift within me. This was not just about my transformation. It was about sharing the message, about helping others who were ready to see. It was about gathering those who were called to walk this path alongside me. But the journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. The forces of resistance were strong, and I could feel their presence growing. I had no idea what the next chapter held, but I knew one thing for certain. The angels were still with me, guiding me, and I had to stay faithful to the path I had been shown, no matter the cost. It felt as though the weight of everything, my newfound faith, my relationships, the truth I had been shown, was bearing down on me all at once. Every moment seemed charged with tension, as if the universe itself was watching, waiting to see what I would do next. The inner peace I had experienced in the beginning now felt like it was being tested by the very forces I had once been shielded from. Greg had become more withdrawn, and the conversations we once had were replaced by awkward silences. My attempts to reach out to him, to explain the things I had experienced, were met with increasing resistance. He would listen, but I could see the skepticism and fear in his eyes. The walls between us were growing higher, and I didn't know how to break them down. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late. Greg was out of the house, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, reading through some of the verses in my Bible. The room was dark except for the soft glow of the lamp, but I didn't feel alone. The presence of the angels was palpable, their protection surrounding me like an invisible shield. I had gotten used to this feeling, but tonight it felt different, charged with something urgent. Suddenly the door burst open. Greg stormed in, his face red with anger. His eyes were wide, almost frantic. "Sarah, I need to talk to you now," he demanded. I stood up, my heart racing. I had never seen him like this. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced with a storm of emotion. "Greg, what's going on?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "What's happened?" He paced back and forth, running a hand through his hair, visibly agitated. "It's this thing you've been talking about. Your angels, your visions, this new religion you're following. You're not the person I married anymore. You're not the woman I fell in love with." The words hit me like a slap in the face. His rejection, his anger, it felt like a sharp pain in my chest. But even as I felt the sting, I knew I had to stand my ground. This wasn't just a difference of opinion. It was a battle for my soul. "I'm still the same person, Greg," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm just seeing the truth that I've been shown. These angels, they are real, and I've felt their presence. They've saved my life. They're guiding me to something greater." Greg's face twisted in disbelief, and I saw the hurt in his eyes. "This is insane, Sarah. I don't know who you are anymore. You've changed, and I can't be a part of this, whatever this is." The words cut deep, more than he could possibly know. He was rejecting me, rejecting the truth I had come to understand. I didn't want to lose him, but I knew that if I didn't stay true to what I had been shown, I would lose something much more important, my soul. "Greg, I don't want to lose you," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. "But I can't deny what I've experienced. The angels are real. God is real. I've been shown the truth, and I can't turn away from it." He shook his head, his voice cracking with frustration. "You don't get it, Sarah. I don't know who you're listening to, but this isn't the woman I love anymore." His words felt like a punch to the gut, but I stood firm, holding back my tears. I couldn't let him tear me away from what I had found. This was a moment of crisis, a critical turning point in my journey. Would I continue to follow the path I had been shown, even if it meant losing everything I had known? Or would I give in to the pressures of the world and the people I loved? I didn't know how to answer him. I only knew that this moment would shape the rest of my journey. I couldn't let fear or even love pull me away from the truth. Before I could respond, Greg turned on his heel and stormed out of the room. The door slammed behind him, leaving me standing there, my heart heavy with the weight of his rejection. The angel's presence, once comforting, now seemed distant, as though they too were waiting to see what I would do next. The choice was mine. I could either give in to the fear and uncertainty that had taken root in my heart, or I could stand firm in the truth that had been revealed to me. I stood still for a long time, the silence pressing in on me. I could hear the beating of my heart, each thud a reminder of the decision I had to make. This wasn't just a spiritual battle, it was a battle for my identity, my relationships, and my soul. And in that moment, I made my choice. No matter how hard the road ahead would be, I would follow the truth. I would not allow fear or doubt to sway me. God had called me for something greater, and I would not turn away from it. The next few days after Greg's outburst were like walking through a fog. His words echoed in my mind, his rejection of me so final, so absolute. I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that I had just witnessed the collapse of everything I had known, my marriage, my sense of security, even my place in the world. The life I had once lived seemed like a distant memory, slipping away with every passing moment. But even in the midst of the turmoil, I knew something had shifted within me. The angels, who had been so gentle in their guidance before, seemed more insistent now, more present. I had once been afraid of the path I was walking, unsure of where it would lead. But now, there was no turning back. I had been called to something greater, and though it terrified me, I couldn't ignore it. It was the night after Greg left that everything seemed to come to a head. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. The angels' presence filled the room, their quiet whispers urging me to continue forward. But still, doubt lingered. I wanted to believe, but the cost was so high. I had lost Greg, and I feared I would lose more. My faith was being tested in ways I never imagined. Then, just as I was beginning to drift into a restless sleep, a familiar voice broke the silence. It was Michael. Again, but this time, his presence felt different. He wasn't the gentle, comforting figure I had encountered before. He was more urgent now, his energy radiating with a power I could hardly comprehend. "Sarah," his voice rang through the room, clear and strong. "This is your moment. You have come to a crossroads. The path you choose now will define your journey. It will define you." I sat up, my heart racing as I looked around the room. Michael appeared before me, glowing with an ethereal light, his eyes filled with compassion and authority. He was not just an angel, he was a messenger, a guide sent to help me navigate the storm I had found myself in. Why is this happening, Michael? I asked, my voice trembling. Why is my world falling apart? I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was following the truth, but now, everything is slipping away. Michael's gaze softened. You are walking a path that many will not understand. Those who are close to you may not see the truth the way you do. But remember this, faith is not about the ease of the journey. It is about trusting in the truth, even when the world around you falls apart. His words hit me like a wave, crashing over me with a force I couldn't resist. I had always believed that faith would be a path of peace, that the angel's guidance would be a gentle and comforting force. But now I saw the truth. Faith was not about comfort. It was about transformation. It was about making choices that would challenge everything you had known, even if it meant losing everything. You must make a choice, Sarah, Michael continued. The people in your life, Greg, your family, will not always understand, but you must choose your faith. Choose the truth that has been shown to you. And in doing so, you will find the strength to face what lies ahead. The weight of his words pressed down on me, and I knew that the time had come. I could no longer walk the line between the life I had known and the new reality I had embraced. I had to make a choice. And that choice would not only define my spiritual journey, but would shape the future of my relationships, my identity, and my very soul. The decision felt like a monumental sacrifice. But in that moment, I understood that sacrifice was part of the process. The angels had been with me every step of the way, guiding me through the darkness, and now they were calling me to trust in the divine plan. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I had already lost so much, but now I realized that I had gained something far greater, a deeper understanding of myself, a profound connection to the divine, and a courage I never knew I had. The journey would not be easy, but it would be worth it. As Michael slowly faded from view, his final words lingered in the air like a sacred echo. Trust in the angels, trust in the truth, and trust in yourself. You are not alone, Sarah. You are never alone. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on my heart, but I knew now what I had to do. The angels had been preparing me for this moment, and with their guidance, I would face whatever challenges came next. As the days passed, I found myself standing at the edge of something greater, yet terrifying. The angels' presence continued to surround me, their energy more potent than ever, but the weight of their guidance felt overwhelming. Every step forward seemed to demand more from me, and I wasn't sure how much more I could give. Greg and I had barely spoken since that night he left. I could feel the rift between us widening, as if an invisible barrier had been erected that neither of us knew how to tear down. The pain of losing him, the man I had once shared everything with, gnawed at my heart. Yet, in the quiet moments when I reflected on my journey, I realized that my connection to the divine was far deeper than any relationship I had known before. The angels had opened my eyes to a truth that transcended earthly bonds, a truth that held the promise of eternal peace and spiritual fulfillment. The final test, the one I had been dreading, came one evening when I was sitting alone at the kitchen table praying for clarity. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within me. Fierce winds howled through the trees and rain pounded against the windows. As I closed my eyes in prayer, I felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere, a disturbance that sent a chill down my spine. When I opened my eyes, the room was darker than before. But it wasn't just the absence of light that unsettled me. It was the palpable presence of a force that wasn't quite like the angels. It was darker, more ominous, and it seemed to swirl around me, pressing in from all sides. I didn't need to look to know what it was. The moment I sensed it, I knew. This was the battle I had been preparing for. The darkness was a manifestation of all my fears, my doubts, and the resistance I had felt in the world around me. It was the very force that had caused me to question my faith and turn away from the truth at times. I stood up, my legs shaky as I faced the growing darkness that surrounded me. My heart pounded in my chest, but deep within I felt something shift, an inner strength that I hadn't known existed before. I had been shown the truth. I had been protected by the angels. I had been called to this moment, and I would not let fear rule me now. As the darkness drew closer, I lifted my hands, whispering the words that had become my lifeline. I trust in you, God. I trust in your angels. I will not be afraid. A sudden light filled the room, as if the very heavens had opened above me. The presence of the angels washed over me, pushing the darkness back. In that instant, I understood something that had eluded me before. Faith was not the absence of fear. It was the courage to face fear head-on, trusting in the divine even when the world seemed to collapse around you. The darkness recoiled, retreating into the corners of the room, but it didn't disappear. No, it remained, waiting for the next opportunity to test my resolve. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had faced it, and I had chosen the light. The angels were with me, their presence now more tangible than ever. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer walking it alone. In that moment of clarity, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't force Greg to understand my journey. I couldn't make him accept the truth I had come to know. But I could choose to continue walking in faith, knowing that the divine was guiding me. And if I remained steadfast, I believed that somehow he would come to see the truth as well. I took a deep breath, allowing the peace of the angels to fill me, and I knew that whatever came next, I was ready. The time had come for me to make my final choice, to embrace the truth and let it define me, no matter the cost. The moment I had feared, the moment I had known was coming, had finally arrived. My heart raced as I stood at the crossroads of my spiritual journey, knowing that the next step would define everything. The darkness had tried to swallow me whole, to break me down and make me question everything I had come to believe. But the light of God, the presence of the angels, and the truth that had been revealed to me were now my strength. I could feel their power coursing through me, and in that moment, I realized that I had already come a long way. The angels had been with me all along, but now their protection was even more tangible, even more present. I had always felt their guidance, but now it was as if I could hear their voices more clearly, could sense their every move. They were surrounding me, strengthening me, preparing me for what was to come. Greg, my husband, was the final piece of this spiritual puzzle. The love I had for him was deep, but I had come to realize that it was not the kind of love that could anchor me in this new journey. As much as I longed for him to understand, to see what I had seen, I knew that I couldn't compromise my newfound faith for the sake of keeping peace. The angels had shown me that sometimes the truth comes with a price, and for me, that price was the potential loss of the relationship that had once meant everything. He came home late that evening, his face shadowed by anger and frustration. It had been days since we had last spoken, and now, here we were again, standing on the brink of the decision that would change our lives. I took a deep breath and met his gaze. My heart trembled, but my soul was resolute. "Greg," I began, my voice steady but full of emotion. I've tried to explain this to you, to show you the truth that I've seen, but I can't keep hiding it. I can't keep pretending I'm the same person I was. I've had an encounter with the divine. The angels, God, they are real. I cannot deny that anymore." His eyes flashed with anger, but there was also pain there, pain I recognized from the depths of my own heart. He had tried to hold on to the woman he knew, the woman who had shared his life for so many years. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I had been transformed. "I don't understand, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This isn't who we are. This isn't who I married. You've become someone else." I felt a pang in my chest as his words struck me, but I didn't flinch. "Maybe I'm not who you thought I was, but I am who I am meant to be. The truth has set me free. I have been shown the path, and I will not turn away from it. Not for you, not for anyone." He recoiled as if my words had physically hurt him, but deep inside, I knew this was necessary. I had to make this choice, not just for me, but for the path God had called me to walk. "I love you, Greg," I whispered, my voice cracking. "But I can't live a lie. I won't. The angels have shown me that I must follow this path, and I can't let fear or doubt hold me back anymore. I have to go." He stared at me, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, but his anger was evident. "So you're leaving me?" he asked, his voice breaking. For these angels and this God you found." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I nodded slowly. "I'm not leaving you, Greg. I'm not leaving our life. I'm choosing God. And I can't do that if I continue to pretend to be someone I'm not." He stepped back as if physically distancing himself from my words. His anger was palpable, but so was his pain. And as much as it hurt me, I knew that this was the moment of truth. I couldn't hold on to him any longer, not at the cost of my soul. "I can't make you understand, but I hope one day you will," I said softly. "I hope you will find your own way, just as I have. But I can't wait for that day to come. I have to move forward." With those words, I turned away. There was no dramatic exit, no final confrontation. There was just me, walking toward a future that was uncertain but filled with hope. As I walked away, I felt the weight of the decision, but I also felt something else: peace. The peace that comes from following the truth, from choosing to walk the path that God has laid out before you, no matter how difficult it may seem. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing: I was no longer afraid. I had faced the darkness, chosen the light, and now I was ready to walk the path of faith, knowing that the angels were by my side every step of the way. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything I've been through, I am overwhelmed with gratitude. It's hard to believe how far I've come, how much has changed, and how deeply my journey has transformed me. I have walked through fire, faced darkness, and chosen to trust in a higher truth, one that I didn't fully understand at first, but that has now become my guiding light. Looking back, I realized that the path I walked was never about the absence of challenges, but about finding strength through them. The angels were with me at every turn, not just as protectors, but as teachers, guiding me towards the truth and showing me the power of faith. In the depths of my pain and confusion, they helped me find clarity. In moments of isolation, they reminded me I was never alone. And through all the heartbreak and loss, I found peace. I found purpose. I now understand that my spiritual journey wasn't just about me, it was about learning to trust in God's plan, no matter how difficult it seemed. It was about realizing that, even in the darkest moments, there is always light. And that light is love. Divine, unconditional love. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Greg and I will ever reconcile, or if my life will ever return to what it once was, but I do know that I am exactly where I need to be. I am following the path that God has set before me, and that is enough. Now, as I share my story with you, I want you to reflect on your own journey. Think about the moments when you felt lost or uncertain, when you faced darkness and thought there was no way out. Ask yourself, did you listen for the light? Did you trust in the angels, in the divine presence that has always been with you? Or were you too afraid to take that step? I encourage you to take a moment now. Reflect on your own beliefs, your own experiences. Know that you are not alone. You too have a purpose. You too are being guided, even in ways you may not fully understand. I invite you to share your thoughts with me. What part of this journey resonates with you? Have you ever felt the presence of angels in your life? Or are you still searching for the truth? Leave a comment, share this video with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of faith, hope, and transformation. Remember, no matter where you are on your journey, the angels are always with you, waiting for you to take that first step toward the truth. Thank you for watching. May you walk in light and peace.